Will you lose your job, and how much time do you have before artificial intelligence replaces you? I think this topic is of interest today to at least everyone under the age of 80. Did you choose the right profession for your children? How can you make sure they don't end up cut off and thrown, as they say, onto the scrap heap of history? The topic of artificial intelligence interests the public not so much theoretically as it does in a very practical sense. Looking around, you can see how many human jobs are already being performed by this intelligence. And on television and the internet, we are constantly bombarded with messages that a huge number of professions will disappear, vanish, and be gone. It's absolutely unclear what to do with millions, or possibly even billions of people who will have nothing to occupy themselves with. They'll be, as they say, going crazy from boredom. What will they do? Will they turn to crime, become alcoholics, spend all day playing video games, or just degrade into a jellyfish-like state? Let's try to figure this out. First, by looking at our past, then by taking an objective look, if we can, at the present, and finally by using what we call analytical abilities, which everyone has. But of course, not everyone knows how to use them, likes to use them, or has ever used them in their life. My good friend Lev Pevsner has just finished a book exactly on this very topic. First of all, a link to it will be provided. And secondly, he has a channel where he talks about this and other ideas and events that have been completely misunderstood by humanity. I'm always very interested to hear him and read his work. Let's take a look and go through some points from his book, which of course I'll be interspersing with my own thoughts, ideas, and analysis. And at the end, I'll come back to this book once again and provide information on where to find the link to it. One of the modern scare stories is that AI will come and a lot of people will lose their jobs. How will we live? How will we feed our families? And strikes begin. Hollywood screenwriters are demanding a ban on the use of AI in script writing, but how will they tell the difference? Lawyers, office managers, translators, they're all in a panic, thinking they will become unnecessary. But most of all, it's the bureaucracy that's terrified. And honestly, bureaucracy is a real nightmare. It's great, though, because all officials do is follow strictly described rules, and artificial intelligence can handle that. Well, to put it mildly, much better. It won't take bribes from people anymore. Of course, you could set it up to take bribes, but I think that would be difficult. Basically, it won't cheat anymore, which means goodbye to cushy jobs, goodbye to a comfortable and carefree life. So, who is really afraid of AI, and does its emergence really pose such a terrible danger to humanity? Is the devil really as scary as he's painted? So the problem is the loss of jobs and the rise of unemployment. Formally, the problem of job loss due to the mechanization of manual labor, which led to mass layoffs, first arose at the end of the 18th century. This is the Luddite movement. That's what I mean. The appearance of mechanical looms deprived thousands of English weavers of their jobs, and therefore their livelihoods, and they rose up in rebellion and riots. Somehow, strangely enough, the real problem is what to do with people who are displaced by technological progress, and this is exactly what technological progress and displacement have always been about. It's just that every time we're told that this time it's something completely different, and this time, well, really, we've said many times that with AI, this time it's really the end. That's it. So in fact, this problem has been solved, and it has been solved many times before. So gentlemen, let's turn to history and talk about the reasons for the emergence of surplus people and the dangers they pose. I apologize for this one here, but it was very difficult to persuade him to sit somewhere down below. Back off, skillful intelligence. The development of equipment and technology inevitably leads to increased labor productivity, and as a result, to a reduction in the number of people. Before, you needed 4 horses and 8 people to plow, but now you have 1 tractor and at most 2 people. That's just because one got drunk, so you need someone else to fill in. So they produce either the same amount of services and products or even more with fewer people needed. Layoffs here don't mean that they're completely let go. As a result, people who are no longer needed in public production appear. Why do these extra people become a problem for the state? And with their appearance, so to speak, it becomes necessary to deal with them. The emergence of large masses of unemployed people always poses a risk of destabilizing society, always, which becomes a problem for those in power. I apologize, it's easy to get them on the right track. And riots, which we are currently witnessing in the United States, by the way, when among the protesters there are people protesting against anything, immigration and customs enforcement, global warming, protection of transgender people, as if they really care about protecting transgender people and all sorts of other nonsense. Yes, people, a lot of people receiving welfare, meaning they are not employed. People need to work, which means there have to be jobs, that is. 100%. It doesn't matter that 2 people can earn for 10, everyone needs to work. Let's ask ourselves, is the emergence of surplus people a constant process? Why a crisis doesn't always occur is a good question, and to understand what's happening, it's essential to answer it. The thing is, along with the emergence of surplus people, there's always another process happening, which we'll call the second process, because it's connected to the first one, the process of absorbing surplus people. You're a surplus person, get out of here, get out, get out. The absorption of surplus people. At the same time, there are 3 main ways to absorb people who have been displaced from production. I mean, the first one is, well, the simplest. So, for many years, this was done through physical elimination. Well, they didn't just go around shooting people, but simply invented some war and sent them off to fight. So, the Crusades, one of them was even called the Campaign of the Third Sons. Yes, I think there were specific reasons for that. The conquest of colonies, settling new lands, conquistadors, expeditions, colonial conquests, Cossacks in Russia. This is where the surplus people were sent, and they usually didn't come back. In the Middle Ages, this was the most common way. The second way was construction, building absolutely unnecessary or barely effective structures. History knows many such examples from ancient times, like the Egyptian pyramids. I strongly suspect that one of the goals was to keep as many people occupied as possible. The construction of the Great Wall of China, the stabilization of wandering dunes in Latvia in the 1930s, the mass construction of autobahns in Germany at the same time, and the development of virgin and fallow lands. That was the 1950s, yes, so to speak. I was a bit late for that. I went to the virgin lands, but everything had already been built there. I also did some building, but it was cowsheds, and something else. The Civilian Conservation Corps in the United States was also in the 1930s, by the way, yes. The Baikal-Amur Main Line, the project to divert water from the northern rivers. Fortunately, the latter was never implemented in the Soviet Union. Mass construction of solar and wind, those wind power stations, in the United States and Europe. I suspect that it was just to keep people busy. I don't know, doing such idiocy, of course. You must have had some completely different goal in mind. Maybe not many people worked there, and the real goal was to steal as much money as possible. All these government projects, by the way, were actually very easy to steal from. The state would pay you extra if you built something like that, meaning you built it at cost price, and then the state, well, how do you even operate it? Nobody cared about that at all. Whether it made sense or not, it didn't matter. All these government projects are economically unjustified, but they create a lot of jobs. Their main purpose is to reduce unemployment and ease social tension. The third way is the most effective and peaceful method of absorbing surplus people by creating and satisfying new needs. Now, this might sound a bit strange to you. New needs, what does that mean? That's why new technologies, new industries, and crafts emerge. Unfortunately, this path was rarely used up until the 20th century, yes, due to the lack of a large number of new mass needs. and people didn't know how to create them yet because technologies are needed for them to be created. I'll explain now. Actually, I think it's not all clear. Yes, so what were the needs of most people reduced to, let's say, in the Middle Ages and in general over the last 5,500 years? To feed so as not to die of hunger. The simplest clothing, a pair of shoes, in Russia, for example, bast shoes. In Europe, I think, wooden clogs. And a minimal house with one room where the whole family lived. Something there, so to speak, to keep it warm. If you have this minimum, you don't need anything else. Because that's how our ancestors, parents, we, and our children lived. It was considered the way to live. Well, this situation began to change radically, starting somewhere in the middle of the 19th century. Of course, everything, so to speak, stems from Newton, but things really started to change radically somewhere in the middle of the 19th century. Science and technology created new technical systems and new needs for the general public. Everyone wanted to have kerosene lamps, clocks, wall clocks. Everyone wanted to have samovars. Everyone wanted to have samovars. It was an incredible advancement in technology, and later pocket watches, automobiles, electrical and household appliances, and much more. The rapid growth of needs led to the creation of a large number of new industries and, as a result, to the absorption of surplus people. But he left the plowing and found a job at the factory. They began to join new industries that met new mass needs, and the development of these industries generated new needs. That's the beauty of it. New things kept generating even more, which in turn gave rise to more and more industries, involving more and more people in them. So how exactly does this emergence and absorption of the surplus actually happen? There are always two opposing processes at work in society. On one hand, as a result of technological progress and according to the law of displacement of humans from the system, labor productivity increases and surplus people appear in society. On the other hand, due to the constant growth and development of known needs and the creation of new ones, there was suddenly a need for an electric kettle. New industries are constantly emerging, which means new jobs are being created. First, you need to bring electricity to the house. Second, you need to install all the wiring inside the house. Third, fourth, and fifth, there is a process of more and more people adopting it, depending on which process prevails. The number of people temporarily not participating in social production either increases or decreases, and accordingly, the level of social tension in society either rises or falls. When more people are added, the number grows. When they're removed, production decreases. So why do crises still occur, you may ask? Yes, in fact, there are actually two ways the processes of the appearance and absorption of surplus people in society can develop. The first is evolutionary, when the number of people pushed out of public production is close to the number of new jobs created by new needs. The second is a gradual, steady process of forming small groups of surplus people. It's a gradual, steady process of forming small groups and surplus people. And also there is subsequent adaptation to new industries by creating additional jobs. So everything happens slowly, evolves, flows from one thing to another. And then there's the second crisis scenario, when some powerful invention causes progress to develop too quickly. That's what we're afraid of now. In one major sector, it pushes a large number of people out of public production all at once. In a short period, this causes an increase in social tensions, which lead to economic and political crises. Of course, how quickly surplus people are pushed out of production due to new technology. This determines the way the process of absorbing surplus people will proceed, and in turn, these are two factors. How large is the group of people who will be displaced by this very new technology, how intense the displacement is, and how quickly the absorption takes place. For example, at the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th centuries, there was rapid mechanization of agriculture, tractors, combines, incubators, poultry farms. And after about 30 to 40 years, half of the population in developed countries was displaced from agriculture. Well, that's terrible, a crisis. No, there was no catastrophe because at the same time they were building tractors, combines, incubators, and poultry farms in the cities. So these people were needed there in the production of all this and many other things that were required in agriculture. So industry was developing rapidly, automobile manufacturing, electrical equipment, and so on. All the people who were displaced from agriculture found jobs in the rapidly growing industry. This is what those people who are shouting are afraid of, saying that this isn't happening now. It's not true. Well, let's talk about it. New needs have emerged. Give me, so to speak, 3 more minutes and we'll get right to the heart of the matter. If I hadn't told you all this, I would have just said it and been done, but this way you'll understand. I hope it matters to you. We have developed new needs. It's no longer enough for a person to just get minimal food, minimal clothing, or a little house with a thatched roof. We started needing things like electric lighting, which never existed before, and household appliances. What is all this anyway? A couple of cars, yes, with air conditioning, please, and with a radio playing, and so that when you get closer, everything opens up and starts heating up. All kinds of clothes, not just one. Now I need to build a special room in my house, a small one, but special, where my clothes will hang. And let your spouse's clothes hang somewhere else, in another room. How many rooms do you need? So that means all kinds of furniture, comfortable, a television, and many, many other things. Some needs have increased over the last 100, 150, 200 years. And in order to satisfy them, people have to work in new industries. And then television appeared, the entertainment industry. And to satisfy these needs, people were needed again. People who had been pushed out of other industries. Another interesting modern situation, since there are no large groups of people employed in any particular type of production, the displacement of some of them when a new technology is introduced cannot lead to a mass exodus, and therefore cannot lead to crises. Let's get back to AI, you rascal. Let's get back to AI. I apologize once again. Indeed, the implementation of AI leads to a significant number of people being displaced, but this won't happen all at once. Why? Well, first, there is a lack of a significant number of AI specialists capable of implementing these developments. Training such people will take years. Second, there is open resistance from labor unions, bureaucracy, and socialist parties, by the way, who are not interested in the implementation of AI, because how will they rally people for strikes then? And by the way, if you don't believe me, just recently the Postal Workers Union on the East Coast of the U.S., at least on the West Coast, I'm not sure, demanded no such thing. No automation of loading at all. Can you imagine that for a second? This in no way makes the work of our union members easier. It doesn't make their job easier. The same goes for screenwriters in Hollywood. Ban the use of AI. I think you simply can't imagine anything more absurd than that. And besides that, it requires enormous amounts of energy, which modern society does not have. By the way, China is the closest, because while we were sleeping all these years, they were building power plants. So it's not possible to quickly increase this capacity. It would take 10, 15, maybe 20 years. These are just 3 factors out of many, and there are probably a lot of them, all of which will slow down the development of artificial intelligence. But even these 3 are enough to understand that there won't be an avalanche-like implementation of AI that would create a large number of redundant people. At the same time, we shouldn't forget that while people are being displaced from their usual jobs, AI is also creating conditions to satisfy a large number of both old, familiar needs and completely new ones that we don't even know about yet, or can guess, but don't really think about. For example, AI will not only allow us to analyze a patient's health record, but also carefully track their entire medical history, comparing it with similar cases in other patients. This allows for faster, more accurate diagnoses and more effective patient treatment. There are, as you probably know, surgical robots, for example. These are just assistants to surgeons, but AI will make it possible to perform unique surgeries better than any surgeon. After all, they will work more precisely, think faster, and monitor all the patient's parameters during surgery. Not a minute to think, but a millionth of a second. Even now, AI allows professional inventors to generate technical solutions faster and better. It doesn't invent by itself, but it helps within the framework of the theory of inventive problem solving. This will become a widespread phenomenon and will significantly accelerate technological development. In other words, with the help of AI, not only those who dedicate their lives to inventing will be able to invent, but anyone at all. If someone has an interesting idea, AI will help them refine it, complete it, and explain how to implement it. In other words, AI becomes an assistant for a person and their creative activities, helping them quickly find the necessary information and clearly formulate their thoughts. The world's population is aging, there's a need for communication, and AI will provide an excellent opportunity to maintain conversations involving real people only when necessary. You know how much this will improve the quality of life for elderly people. Well, I'm not even talking about how it controls the operation of traffic lights, highways, cars, an entire city, reduces traffic jams, saves fuel, lowers emissions. There are a huge number of benefits. Let's understand that even now there are many areas where there is a shortage of workers, a catastrophic shortage of doctors, nurses, technical support staff, while the demand for healthcare is growing. We live longer, so the demand is increasing. Now, housing maintenance. Those who live in the United States know how hard it is to find a plumber or an electrician. Why wouldn't people who left other places come here? After COVID, a huge number of schools closed, and there's a lack of a vocational education system, and we need to have it again all across America. There is a need for millions of jobs, construction. No, a shortage of housing. Yes, a shortage of housing, a shortage of affordable housing. Those who shout about this only know how to take away and divide, but what we need is to build, and that requires a huge number of people. If we don't want to bring in Chukchi from somewhere, no offense to the Chukchi or to Mexicans or anyone else. Again, I don't want to offend Mexicans. It's just that they're being used. If we want to use our own people, then we need to teach them this. Millions of jobs are needed in construction in developed countries like Sweden and Japan. Most of the waste is processed at factories, where it is turned into raw materials, energy, fertilizers, and building materials. In the United States, only 7% of waste is processed at factories. I mean, cities are suffocating from garbage. Just look at New York. The solution to this problem is both environmental, complete waste recycling, and economic, solvent demand and millions of jobs. And energy will help with this work. And only those areas where changes have long been needed but which generally are not being talked about. So there's no need to be afraid that artificial intelligence will take away our jobs. There's plenty of work. In reality, there aren't enough people to fill even the existing jobs. Also, don't forget that our population isn't really growing at all. Maybe it's increasing just a little, but that's mostly due to immigration. To fill new jobs, we need people. So it would be great to free up people where we can with AI and move them to where they're needed. Don't panic about AI like left-wing politicians and socialists do. Instead, work, create, and let the market solve this problem that doesn't actually exist. So, in conclusion, people won't lose their jobs, just like what happened with changes in agriculture at the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century. It's just that the situation will change. But what will happen faster is displacement. So what will happen faster? the displacement of people from production or the creation of new jobs. Paradoxically, one trend or the other will periodically prevail, just as it has for the past 200 years. What will this depend on? The main global factor will be the relationship between society and the state, which is why it's so important for the state to understand what it's doing. If market relations prevail in the country, government regulation will be kept to a minimum, and entrepreneurs will be able to quickly develop new businesses. The market will easily absorb surplus people, creating opportunities. Look, I'm terribly sorry about this, but I can't do anything about it. If I lock him up somewhere, he'll scream like a madman. So, if market relations prevail in the country, government regulation will be kept to a minimum, and entrepreneurs will be able to quickly develop new businesses. The market will easily absorb extra people and will keep creating more and more jobs. There will be competition for good people and their salaries will go up. Well, everything as it should be, basically. But if bureaucracy prevails in the country and government regulation creates obstacles for entrepreneurs, then business won't be able to create enough new jobs or absorb those who have been displaced from production, and then a crisis will be inevitable. So let's sum up. Will people be displaced by technology? And is this really an objective law of the development of technical systems? Will it happen so rapidly that it will cause social unrest? No, it won't happen, but there will be a lot of speculation from various kinds of socialists and bureaucrats. There will be a lot of scare stories and speculation, and people will try to frighten others. Third, we need to clearly understand that all the scare stories about mass unemployment caused by AI are nothing more than idle fabrications by socialist leaders. There will be enough work for everyone, gentlemen. There will be enough work for everyone with the advent of AI. There's no need to be afraid, but we do need to prepare for this in order to manage social processes thoughtfully. And we need to understand that a free economy creates a large number of new products and services and also forms new needs. If it develops at a faster pace compared to the emergence of surplus people, it will help avoid major social crises and allow for the growth of wages and conditions. The standard of living, at least in America, yes, I don't know about other countries. Israel, America, I hope very much. Then Britain, Australia, I know, then Japan, Turkey. Nevertheless, AI carries a very serious danger, but a completely different one, absolutely different, yet incredibly serious. And it becomes the foundation for the rapid growth of people's well-being. Masses of automated machines will not only help provide humanity with food, but also with quality housing, clothing, and footwear. Artificial intelligence will help people in the service sector and in performing many other tasks. And if the growth of consumption is limited, or the growth of needs lags behind the growth of opportunities provided by artificial intelligence, conditions will be created so that a significant portion of people can receive enough handouts from society to live quite comfortably without working. This could be welfare or, of course, a basic income. In other words, society will be able to provide a fairly comfortable existence, meeting most of the lower-level needs for a significant part of its population without involving them in work. Who is this very tempting for? For poorly educated, socially underdeveloped people, especially in less developed countries, for whom work is a burdensome duty. Being freed from the need to work for survival is simply a godsend. It will happen with their consent. You just sit quietly, don't make a fuss, and we'll provide you with your basic minimum needs, benefits. Creating such conditions will lead to the emergence of a significant parasitic layer capable of supporting the party that gives them these free benefits, that is, social democratic parties, parties of bureaucracy. Their seizure of power will lead to the formation of something in society resembling a mouse paradise. Look it up on the internet to see what it is. I've already talked about this several times. Universe 25. In English, it's only for people, not for mice. This could become a catastrophe for humanity, just like it became a catastrophe for the inhabitants of Universe 25, that is, for the mice. Such a turn of events will lead to a catastrophic scenario and, in my opinion, the extinction of humanity and the halt of civilization. A person ceases to be human without work and becomes an aggressive, frightening animal with a disturbed mind. The absence of the need to fight for life, to work, is not a blessing but a curse for humanity. This is the catastrophe that a society with socialist ideology is heading towards, the one that the bureaucracy is pushing forward. This is above all the main danger in the development of artificial intelligence, and here Lev Pevzner and I were in complete agreement. This danger can only be avoided by developing people's needs, and at a pace that outstrips the opportunities provided by technological progress. In particular, actually, because this is just a specific example of all that. At the same time, our society must eliminate the situation where any of its members can avoid working. Caring for a person means giving him a job that brings satisfaction, not providing for all his needs without work. What should we do? What should we do? We are coming to the end, ladies and gentlemen, of our discussion. It is necessary to focus on developing new needs. It sounds crazy, right? Yes, it seems like it should be the other way around. All the time we were told there is no need, new needs. We need to develop technology that creates new needs, ensure the proactive creation of new needs for society, and create market conditions for its implementation. This will ensure the rapid creation of new jobs, absorbing people who will be displaced by AI. One of the methods capable of ensuring this is the theory of inventive problem solving. I highly recommend that everyone with creative abilities take a look at what this is. By the way, the YouTube channel Theory of Inventive Problem Solving for Everyone talks about this. Theory of inventive problem solving is the theoretical solution of inventive problems. Lev Pevzner, who is a candidate of technical sciences, is a master of this very thing. The link will be in the description, and you can read more about what I told you in his book, Civilization, Superfluous People, and Artificial Intelligence, which is available in both Russian and English. The link will be in the video description. So let's once again state what we've come to. They're trying to scare you again. Some do this so that you'll vote for a certain party, while others simply want to make money from the ads that will be placed in their sensational news. And the more views this message gets, the more money the person who figured out how to lure you in will make. That's why you see sensational headlines instead of actual titles for many articles and videos on the internet. You can understand people. They're all just trying to make a living, earn their bread, butter, and a little extra through these conversations with you. By people, I mean bloggers, journalists, politicians, and so on. If you want to prepare for something, become a specialist in artificial intelligence, study theory of inventive problem solving. Find out what it is, get in touch with Lev, or at least with people who teach and work in this field. He can tell you who is doing this and where. There are a lot of books. I've read quite a few. If I weren't doing my current job, I'd probably have gone into that field myself. And if you're at an age where learning something new is difficult, don't worry. Honestly, for your lifetime, for mine too, for both of our lifetimes, it'll be fine. There will be enough jobs that are currently needed, at least in the United States and Europe, and in Israel. I suspect in Australia as well. What's happening now has actually happened before many times. And most importantly, it will happen many more times in the future. Unless, of course, our civilization destroys itself, which is also quite possible, but hopefully it won't destroy itself or us. Until tomorrow, until our next meeting, ladies and gentlemen.